The city's mayor says 2 civilians were among the 9 Ukrainians killed in these airstrikes when Russian forces hit blocks of residential homes. Again, residential homes. The city, which is about 2 hours outside of Kyiv, has suffered through several days of shelling by the Russian military. To be very clear, the Russians, Putin, they're targeting the civilian population of Ukraine. These are not errant bombs. These are not mistakes because of strikes on military targets nearby. These are Russian forces trying and succeeding in killing Ukrainian kids and moms and dads and grandparents. Today, President Putin claimed the war in Ukraine is going according to plan and is on schedule. The U.S. intelligence indicates Russia did not predict the amount of resistance that its troops are now facing from Ukraine. That resistance includes these efforts you see from the Ukrainian military. The country's Ministry of Defense shared this video with journalists. It's a video of Ukrainian missiles. The ministry claims it targeted and destroyed clusters of Russian forces. Our reporters are live across Ukraine and the region, as only CNN can do. We start with CNN's Sam Kiley, who is in the central Ukrainian city of Uman. And Sam, Russian negotiators say that they may allow a temporary ceasefire in order to allow civilians to leave Ukraine.
Yeah, it's less of a ceasefire, I think, Jake, and more of the establishment of routes, safe routes. They have the only breakthrough that the Ukrainians have acknowledged is that the safe routes out of Kiev, out of Kharkiv, critically, perhaps even out of Mariupol, are being allowed, or at least have been verbally agreed to. How that translates into safety for civilians who need to flee, particularly in the east. You've seen those devastating images out of northern Kharkiv, out of northern Kyiv. But Kharkiv has now endured wave after wave after wave of aerial bombardment, of multiple rocket launcher systems attacking civilian areas. Mariupol in the far south has been encircled. The mayor there has told CNN there's no food, no water, no electricity for his substantial population. You've got the city of Kherson, where the mayor has said that the Russians have taken over, but young men are being randomly arrested. People can't walk in groups of more than 2 people. Very heavy pressure being put on these cities, a deep need to get people to safety, and some hope that they may be able to do so down the so-called humanitarian corridors. But there's no real indication as to how that is going to work and how that is going to be organised, whether or not it would be set up, for example, by the Red Cross, all these so-called modalities, Jake, to be worked out, but coming at a very, very dangerous time when the Russians are clearly increasing the pressure on the civilian population, possibly because they've been held up in terms of the speed of their military advance, Jake.
Sam, Vladimir Putin has ludicrously claimed to justify his barbarism that he's trying to, quote, denazify Ukraine, a country that has a democratically elected Jewish president. The Russians have bombed the Holocaust memorial in Ukraine. You met with some of Ukraine's Jews in what I'm told is one of the most holy sites in Hasidic Judaism. What did they have to tell you?
Well, I'm here in Uman, a city that has been enjoying a huge number of Hasidic pilgrims every year, particularly for Jewish New Year, because this is the burial site of Rabbi Nachman of Bezlov. 200 and something years ago, he was interred here at the age of 38. He is a magnet for the Hasidic Jews who've been welcomed here in the local synagogue, though, and this is what is really striking, Jake. They almost laugh at the idea that Vladimir Putin is sending his troops to kill and die in Ukraine in the name of denazifying a country that is now extremely benign, possibly the most benign regime that there's been in many hundreds of years towards Jews. They're welcome here. The synagogue here, they say, is the biggest in Europe, and its basement, which is normally used for the ritual bathing, the mikveh, is now being used as a bunker for Jew and Gentile alike. And indeed, the hotel that I'm staying in normally houses pilgrims. It's now a location where people are fleeing from Kharkiv or further east are travelling through. The Jewish community, such as it is that is left here, is also doing what they can to feed people as they move through, particularly trying to look out for those who've been left behind, people who've kind of lost contact with friends and relatives, trying to get them back, put back together and sent on their way. And inside the synagogue, the worshippers have remained, insist that they are very much in support of Ukraine and very highly contemptuous of this idea that the country's being invaded in the name of denazification, Jake.
Yeah, indeed. Mikvah turned into a bomb shelter, denazification. Sam Kiley in Uman, Ukraine, thank you so much. Stay safe, please. We've seen the heartbreaking images of mothers and their young children desperately trying to escape Ukraine. For some families, that's simply not an option. CNN's Clarissa Ward visited Ukraine's largest children's hospital, where doctors have moved their sickest patients underground and promised not to leave their sides no matter how bad the Russian punishment of that innocent country gets.
Outside the Ahmedid hospital, the sound of heavy fighting pierces the night air. The shelling has started, this nurse says. We're in the surgical department for newborn babies. It's so loud. Exhausted staff hover nervously in the hallway. This is Ukraine's largest children's hospital. Shutting down is not an option.
We decided to open your surgical department here.
Neurosurgeon Dmytro Ishenko shows us the impact of just 1 week of war.
So the children who are too sick to be moved have to stay here in the basement in case the bombardment starts again.
There are 10 patients currently being treated in this underground hallway, and they are very sick indeed.
Is this your daughter?
On the floor in one corner, we meet Sonia and her 3-month-old daughter, Milena. Milena has a brain tumor. It's a terrifying situation. We must stay underground, and we don't know how long for, she says. I'm alone here at the hospital, and my husband is at home with my other kid. For 7 nights, she has been sleeping on this floor as the bombing gets closer.
She's saying that the stress of the situation has meant that her milk is dried up, so she's now using formula for her daughter.
With resources being diverted to deal with trauma injuries, parents are stepping in to help where they can. At one bed, Valentine is feeding an unconscious child.
So he's saying that little baby there is his little boy, but he's helping with this child because their mother can't be here.
I tell him he's strong. There's no other way, he says. God gives us strength. In this environment, Dr. Ishenko offers his patients and their families whatever he can, but there are limits.
It's really very challenging and really tough because we don't have good conditions for our patients.
Is this dangerous for them, this situation?
Yes, and not only because we have a war, these conditions is not suitable with brain surgeries.
For now, non-essential procedures are on hold. 11-year-old Yaroslav's sutures should have been removed, but the risk of infection is too high. His mother, Ludmila, tries to comfort him. I will massage you and everything will be okay, she says. But no one knows how long this war will last. And these children cannot wait forever.
Jake, tonight we're continuing to hear the crackle of gunfire, the sound of explosions here in the capital as the fighting gets ever closer. Now, the Ukrainians did meet with a Russian delegation today in Belarus. We don't know much about the details of that conversation, but one thing that they did seem to agree upon, or at least start to draw up the parameters of some kind of an agreement for, was the establishment of humanitarian corridors in some of these cities that are getting hit so hard. That, of course, absolutely essential, not just for children like the one you just saw in our story, but for children and civilians all over this country who are being bombarded day in and day out, and it's only getting worse, Jake.